Tonight on CFTK-TV, Terrace receives over $6 million from investment money. The premiers make their way to the White House, and the Four Nations face-off hits Montreal.
Northwest BC's only television news team. We are CFTK-TV News.
Hello, I'm Damian Smith, and thank you for joining us here on CFTK-TV. We begin today with a story about the latest cold spurt that we've had here in the Northwest and how the risk of freezing, frostbite, and hypothermia can become real threats to the vulnerable and unhoused. And Jaylene Matthews from CFTK-TV spoke with outreach workers to see how they've been faring.
When the weather turns cold like this, shelter becomes essential. And for those without a fixed address, the situation is life and death.
And we definitely see an increase in the numbers of people experiencing homelessness. There is a misconception that folks are being brought in from other communities, the Lower Mainland. That's simply not true. When people are coming from outside of Terrace, they're coming from the region. So they're coming from those smaller communities that Terrace already services. And a lot of the people that are now starting to access shelters or even access our food services are folks that have lived in Terrace, are living in Terrace, and they're just being squeezed out, essentially.
Outreach worker Angie Brown says the lack of second stage and available low-income housing creates huge barriers to actually getting people off the streets.
You know, if anybody would just sit down with them, you'd be able to talk all day long. Like, they're really good people and they're just lost. They just need to get back up on their feet. As long as you're there beside them and not standing over them and everything like that, you know, like everybody would be, I would say everybody would have a different perspective of our people that are on the street.
A temporary winter shelter has been operating at Cassan's Turning Point's location in Terrace this season, providing 10 extra beds for the winter.
We are using the LaCelle's shelter, the temporary winter shelter, as an overnight only shelter. It's also an overflow option for us. So if an individual is seeking shelter and they're able to access the Southside shelters, we will find them transportation to get them there.
Brown mentioned that losses in the past few years have been significant.
We have a big family. Like we don't call everybody that's on the street just like our clients. They're our friends, they're our family, and you know, we build a very close relationship, so it really hits deep when this happens. It happened too many times. You know, like, you don't leave your dog outside. Why can't we bring our people in when it's freezing? Why does it have to be minus freaking 8 before we open up a warming center? Why does it have to be like freezing? What about the rain? That rain, like, you're soaking wet. Even if it's not minus 8, if it's minus 2 and you're soaked, you're gonna freeze. Why do we have to wait until tragedy hits before we help anybody?
The temporary winter shelter will remain open for overflow needs until March 31st. For CFTK TV News in Terrace, I'm Jaylene Matthews.
And the federal government just announced that a brand new $33.1 million investment will go towards 6 projects spread across Alberta and British Columbia, all of whom are aimed at driving economic growth in Western Canada. The project that will be getting the second highest amount of money of projects is one that will directly affect the northern part of BC as a multi-commodity inland port located in Terrace that will get $6.2 million. The port's purpose is for it to serve as a hub that will see goods both shipped in and out of northwestern BC. In a statement from NSD Inland Port, the rail terminal and transload facility running the port confirmed that while the site is already open, the funds will be mainly used to expand the site to cover 18,000 feet. And in business news, a major sale is currently on the path to get some done within the near future between a pair of major media companies in Canada. Here's Cale Maslin of CFTK-TV.
Vista Radio has recently gotten public approval from the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission to officially purchase 21 radio stations as well as 27 regional repeater transmitters from Bell Media. Outside of stations in Victoria and Vancouver, this means that Vista is on track to own every other radio station in the entirety of British Columbia, including both CFTK Terrace as well as CJFW FM in Terrace, and the 8 total transmitters for said station that have been placed throughout the Northwest. The official price tag for Vista's purchase of these stations is set at $3,036,000, and some of the other stations in the Northwest that are joining Vista as well include the likes of Prince Rupert's CHTK-FM, Kitimat CKTK-FM, and CJDC in Dawson Creek. Every little detail about the sale that is publicly available to this point can be found in the business section of the CRTC's website. For CFTK-TV News, I'm Cale Maslin.
And we regret to announce that a renowned Haisla hereditary leader and carver, Sammy Robinson, has passed away. The Haisla Nation posted their condolences to Robinson's family in a statement saying Robinson was not only the highest-ranking chief in the community, but also an internationally acclaimed artist and master carver whose creations brought immense pride to the Haisla people. They said his legacy will forever reside in the hearts of the Haisla community as well. Flags in Kitimat and LNG Canada were lowered on the 11th to honor Robinson's passing. On behalf of the district, Mayor Phil Germuth offered their condolences, saying Robinson has left a lasting and meaningful impact on the local communities. Coming up next, Donald Trump looks to find common ground for Russia and Ukraine. Welcome back to CFTK-TV. Well, in efforts to end the Russia and Ukraine war, President Donald Trump has reached out to both sides to see if there is some common ground that they can all reach. Joy Malvin has more on what is going down over in Washington.
American teacher Mark Fogel imprisoned in Russia for 3 years at the White House, praising President Donald Trump.
I feel like the luckiest man on earth.
Fogel's return a goodwill gesture from Russia that led to a dramatic prisoner swap with a Russian cyber criminal and a friendly 90-minute phone call between Trump and Russia's President Vladimir Putin, both agreeing to begin negotiations immediately to end the war in Ukraine.
We had a great call, and it lasted for a long time, over an hour. I also had with President Zelensky a very good call after that. And I think we're on the way to getting peace.
Trump, who promised to end the war in 24 hours, agreed to Putin's demand, denying Ukraine NATO membership.
Ukraine cannot go into NATO, and I'm okay with that.
And when asked if Ukraine's President Zelensky is being sidelined,
it's an interesting question. I think they have to make peace. Their people are being killed, and I think they have to make peace.
Meeting with NATO allies, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth announcing a major shift in U.S. policy, delivering a blunt message to Ukraine.
We must start by recognizing that returning to Ukraine's pre-2014 borders is an unrealistic objective.
And telling European leaders future security is now up to them. It's a bitter blow to Ukraine and President Zelensky, who offered a deal to Trump, Ukrainian rare earth minerals in exchange for military aid.
Ukraine's going to have to cut a deal that the Americans are brokering right now. No choice, because alternatively, they would have to fight without American support.
Peace negotiations start as soon as Friday in Munich, and President Trump plans to sit down with President Putin in Saudi Arabia, opening a new chapter in Russian relations.
And now we turn our attention to the local forecast for tonight and for the week ahead. Tonight's weather on the north coast should see clear conditions with winds light except for the ones from the northeast at 60 kilometers per hour, and the low should be -5 with the wind chill of -6 in the evening and a -11 overnight. Terrace and Kitimat should be partially cloudy with the winds coming from the north at 30 kilometers per hour, increasing to 50 at times. The low will be -12 with a wind chill of -13 this evening and -22 overnight. The Balti Valley should be partially cloudy with winds up to 15 kilometers per hour. There is a risk of frostbite tonight with a low of minus 24 and the wind chill of minus 21 in the evening and minus 33 overnight. Onto your weekly weather forecast. The north coast will see some snow tomorrow, but it looks like it'll be back to normal for the foreseeable future, with rain on Saturday and a chance of snow or flurries for the next few days. After that, the high will be 5 degrees starting on Sunday and the low will be minus 3 tomorrow night. Terrace and Kitimat will have the same pattern, just with snow, as there should be some sun tomorrow, then cloudy conditions for the rest of the week. The high will be 2 degrees on Tuesday and the low will be minus 11 tomorrow night. Finally, the Bulkley Valley will see a bit more sun on Saturday and Monday, including some warmer temperatures by the start of next week. There's also a good chance of flurries on Sunday as well. The high will be minus 1 on Tuesday with a low of a minus 19 tomorrow night. Now we take a look at your Northwest roadside report. For additional updates, make sure to check out drivebc.ca. Highway 16 has compact snow from Doreen to Whitsett, slippery sections as well. Highway 37 has slippery sections from Terrace to Kitimat and compact snow from Kitwanga until the Yukon border. Highway 37A has compact snow. Highway 118 has slippery sections. The Nishka Highway has slippery sections, and Telegraph Creek Road has compact snow. And these were the cameras we're looking like from around the Northwest. Still to come, the NHL's Four Nations face-off is now underway, with Canada coming out on top. Hello again. Well, over in Montreal, the Four Nations face-off is now underway and has been a long time coming for best-on-best international hockey, where fans have had to wait almost 9 years to see players like Connor McDavid and Sidney Crosby wear the Canadian jersey. And Matt Gilmore from CTV News has the story from outside of the arena.
Go Canada, go! Go Canada, go!
They've come from across the country.
We're actually from New Brunswick. So we came down yesterday, we made the drive, and yeah, we're excited for the game tonight.
And around the world to see their favorite stars play international hockey for the first time in nearly a decade.
How could you miss this? It's best on best hockey. First time we've done it in how long? Great to be here, you know, best of the best, and watch my idols from when I played ice hockey, so yeah.
Who's your favorite player? Caulfield. Austin Matthews.
All right.
Outside the Bell Centre, the week got off to an extra special start for a group of young Canadian fans who met Finnish hockey legend and Hall of Famer Teemu Selanne.
That's awesome. I just love kids, and you know, there's so much passion for hockey, and obviously they never saw me play, but they still know kind of who I am, so there's a lot of appreciation.
He says for the players, there's no better feeling than pulling on the national team sweater.
Oh, it's so much pride, and I think every little kid dreams to play for their own countries and for hockey, and especially when the best are playing. So it's very special.
There have been more star sightings.
Came down as a family for the tournament. He got to meet Brad Marchand yesterday. It was pretty cool, and a few YouTubers for hockey, so it's been worth the trip so far.
Oh, Marchand's my favorite player, so it was awesome.
And for fans that don't have tickets, there is still a lot of festivities to come and enjoy outside the Bell Centre in the fan zone.
On Saturday for the doubleheader, we're going to expand into Windsor Station with a lot more activations, some alumni appearances and things like that.
The Bell Centre is hosting 4 games, including Canada against the United States on Saturday, a game that can even turn husband and wife into bitter rivals.
We'll have to work out some terms here. I'll have my U.S. jersey on. He'll have his Canada jersey on.
Then the tournament moves to Boston for 2 more round-robin games and a final on February 20th. Matt Gilmore, CTV News.
And speaking of the Four Nations, there was also a game played yesterday between Canada and Sweden, where it was the first time since 2016 that fans got to see this best-on-best hockey. And it started off with a tic-tac-toe play that gave Canada the early go-ahead on the power play, with Nathan McKinnon opening the scoring for Canada, assisted by Sidney Crosby and Connor McDavid. Then later on, we had a 2-on-1 goal, starting with Braden Point coming down the middle of the ice. We need Brad Marchand on the back door to make it 2-0 for Canada. Sweden, then midway through the second, sees Victor Hedman feeding a pass over to Jonas Brodin, who scores a much-needed goal for Sweden after only having 3 shots in the first period. Then shortly towards the end of the second, Sidney Crosby drops it off for Mark Stone to make it 3-1 for Canada, and Crosby picks up his second assist of the game, and we'll see more from him a little bit later. Sweden didn't go away, however. Erik Karlsson feeds a pass to Adrian Kempe, who cuts the lead to within 1 for Canada, as Sweden really started to carry the pace of play at this moment. And not long right after that, a tic-tac-toe play sees Joel Eriksson Ek open up for a tap-in goal to tie the game at 3 apiece, leading this game into overtime between these two powerhouse teams. But shortly after, Mitch Marner goes end-to-end after taking a drop pass from Sidney Crosby, resulting in the game winner for Team Canada, who come out with a 4-3 win in overtime. And Canada will play their next game against the United States on Saturday, which will be starting at 5 p.m. Pacific time. Now we take a look at the stock market, where we have an increase in most categories today. The Canadian dollar is up about 0.3 of a penny. The price of gold is up $16.70. Oil is down 8 cents. Natural gas is up 6 cents, and aluminum is down $18.50. In Toronto, the TSX is up about 135 points. The Venture Index is up 6.3. In New York, the Dow Jones is up about 343, and NASDAQ is up 296. And BC is experiencing peaking flu activity right now, but the Center for Disease Control said the spike is typical of respiratory illness season, while COVID levels are low or decreasing. Data shows influenza A's percentage positive rates in BC have rose to 24% in the week ending February 1st, over double the rate from December. But Dr. Danuta Skoronsky said the spike isn't abnormal beyond arriving later than usual, adding that spikes haven't developed for COVID-19 or RSV. Skoronsky, the principal investigator for a surveillance network on vaccine effectiveness, said vaccination remains the best protection against the flu, with this year's vaccine shown to reduce the requirement for medical care by half compared to unvaccinated people. Still ahead, cancer rates have been higher than ever around the country. Welcome back to our final segment. Well, in their efforts to prevent a trade war, Canada's premiers have been trying to make their case directly to President Trump, as yesterday they made their way to the White House, but not quite into the inner circle. And CTV's Judy Trin reports from Washington.
It took an hour for Canada's premiers to clear White House security. Once inside, they got the same amount of time to plea against tariffs.
We appreciate the Trump administration facilitating this literally in the last minute, and we're grateful. We listened, we communicated.
The premiers weren't in the Oval Office. Instead, they met with the president's deputy chief of staff and the director of personnel. Officials just outside the ring of top advisors.
We had frank conversations about the 51st state comment, where we underlined that was a non-starter.
But the message may not have made a difference. Later, James Blair, the deputy chief of staff, clarified, "We never agreed that Canada would not be the 51st state. To understand President Trump, take what he says at face value." That's what Federal Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc was told as well. He met with Howard Lutnick, the incoming Commerce Secretary. In their meeting, LeBlanc says he got clarity on how the Trump administration will assess Canada's progress on fighting fentanyl and tightening border security.
We now have, I think, a good understanding of their process
markers over the next number of weeks. And they were very clear that Canada very much has their attention.
A 25% tariff on all Canadian goods that are linked to border concerns could be coming as soon as March 4th, after Canada got a 30-day pause. And just this week, Trump announced a separate 25% global tariff on steel and aluminum. That disproportionately impacts Canada, the biggest exporter of those metals to the U.S., hammering home that what matters most to Trump is putting America first.
He's using it, yes, as a negotiating leverage point, but also I think he's very keen on raising revenue for other objectives that he has.
Next week, several premiers will return to the U.S. Capitol to meet with a group of state governors in hopes they can help change Donald Trump's mind.
And around Canada, we have now reached a new all-time high for breast cancer rates. And many out there that have been diagnosed want the public to be prepared for the worst and to always pursue a checkup once in a while before finding out about bad news too late. Adrian Gabriel from CTV News has our final story of the day.
Each year, millions of Canadians visit a breast imaging center, with tens of thousands receiving a dire diagnosis.
I had a highly aggressive cancer, which is why I ultimately needed chemo.
In May 2023, Robbie Spring was diagnosed with breast cancer at the age of 35. Just 2 months earlier, Spring's 43-year-old sister was also told she had breast cancer. It was a crushing blow for their entire family, considering that 5 years earlier, their mother had also been diagnosed with the same disease.
I just didn't want to call my mom. How can I tell her that she's actually has 2 daughters going through cancer at the same time?
The Spring family is just one example of a growing number of new patients.
As a first-line worker, I'm very well aware of the increase in patients that we're seeing.
According to Statistics Canada data that excludes Quebec, there were nearly 21,000 new cases of breast cancer across the rest of the country in 2019. The Canadian Cancer Society estimates that number increased to 30,800 last year.
We know that during COVID, there was a less number of people being diagnosed with cancer. We now anticipate that we will see that number come in at a much higher rate.
At Toronto's North York General Hospital, the influx of new patients since 2019 has increased 166%.
You hear that number, you're on the front lines here at the hospital. What goes through your mind?
The greatest number of increasingly newly diagnosed patients are the under 50-year-old patients.
Ontario recently joined BC, Saskatchewan, and Atlantic Canada in granting women as young as 40 a mammogram if they request one. In Alberta and Manitoba, the age is 45. Quebec is currently reviewing their policy. Now at 37 years of age, Spring still wouldn't qualify anywhere in the country.
The younger you are, the more likely it is you have an aggressive type of cancer, but breast cancer. And so catching it early is imperative.
For Robbie Spring, she hopes her personal breast cancer journey, as well as her family's, serves as an awakening for women across Canada to advocate for themselves. Adrian Gabriel, CTV News, Toronto.
And that'll be all for our cast tonight. Thank you very much for watching here on CFTK-TV, and have a good evening.